The language of the air traffic controllers is English. I remember a story I read, and I don't know if it's true, but it illustrates the point, that there was a Chinese plane that crashed into the side of a mountain. And when they pulled out the black box and listened to it, this was a passenger plane, and there were a lot of fatalities, I understand. The last word on the black box was, pull up, pull up. What is pull up? Well, not a very good handle on English, and the plane crashed. This report tells us a number of things about the utilization of English and the lack of it in this country. And that is that the value of English proficiency here in the United States, the people that are English proficient earn more money than those that do not. The immigrants that come here that learn English quickly earn more money than those who do not learn it at all or learn it slowly. And the value of those dollars, most of those details, I'm gonna ask Don to deliver those. I'll just pick up some of these that I think are important. And in this country, some of the findings in this Lexicon Institute study are over 11 million English learners living in the United States, and that means that they are experiencing a loss of potential earnings of approximately $65 billion because they're earning less money because their English proficiency makes them a less valuable employee or an entrepreneur that can't create as many opportunities because they are as versatile in our broader society. The study also shows that 26.3% of English learning families live in poverty. English learning families, more than a fourth of them live in poverty. And that English speaking immigrants from non-English speaking countries earn 14% more annually than those who do not speak English. So those comparisons show the same thing. And usually when I bring up this kind of a position, somebody will tell me, well, I know this person who was an entrepreneur and they made a lot of money selling bananas or starting a little franchise business. Sure enough, there are exceptions all across for everything. But we're talking about the rules here. The rule is the study that Don has done. According to the 2000 census, 59% of U.S. elementary school children who are English learners were born within the United States to immigrant parents. 59% of the English learners are born here in this country. I recall a hearing that we had before the Small Business Committee, and the witness was, at that time, second in command to Elaine Chao, the Secretary of Labor. And she testified that they were having trouble filling the light industrial manufacturing jobs because they had people who would apply for the jobs, but they didn't have enough English skills to be able to teach them to run a punch press or lathe or the light industrial equipment that was there. And so I asked the question, I said, I understand why immigrants that come into the United States will have a language problem, but what about second generation? Are you running into second generation people that don't command English? And she said, yes, we are, lots of them, and in fact we have third generation that have been in this country, the third generation that don't have enough language skills, that we can't put them to work in light industry. We just can't educate them to run some of this equipment. That's a failure of a system that has coddled people for so long and allowed for and actually sometimes encouraged the creation of language and ethnic enclaves that people live in, these enclaves, and they don't go out, or if they do, they go out in a group with an interpreter to do, well, migratory farm work would be one of those. And we see this in the construction industry that I am in around our neighborhood. The carpenter crew comes in to put up a hog confinement building, and there might be 10 or 15 people there. I don't think they are legal, but they'll have one interpreter, and then there'll be a boss that tells the interpreter how to boss the rest of them. Of course, their wages are low, and that's why they're there. And they aren't going to break out of this unless we can teach them English. And then the immigration side of this thing, I think you know where I stand on that. But we just simply, when we have linguistic isolation, it can be in the schools or it can be in the homes. And if you isolate these students in the schools, then the result is that they're learning with other kids that are isolated. And when that happens, they aren't exposed to the broader society, and they aren't working with people that are fluid in the English language, so that holds them back, and their development is tied together and holds them all down. The immersion part of this thing is something that I very much believe in. And I recall, I'm from Denison is the town that I grew up in, Denison, Iowa. If you look on the maps of, let's say, multicultural concentrations, however it's defined. We have a lot of that, and because it's a packing plant town. And young lady that, well, she used to be young, she's about my age now, still a young lady, took a job to teach down there in the school. And so she was teaching the non-English speaking students, and she took them in. Didn't know a word of Spanish, and so she just brought them in this immersion class. So this is all I can do. If I'm going to teach them, I can't learn Spanish, so I'm just going to teach them English relentlessly and cut out the other language. So this was English language immersion. And she had a young lady there, I think it was in 7th grade. And when she came into town, this young lady didn't speak a word of English. And put her in the class. In a matter of 5 to 6 months, this girl was getting straight A's in English. Student, it's 10 years to get them up to speed. Maybe so it is. We use numbers of maybe 7 years is another one of those times to get them up to speed. I'll submit that if you throw me into an environment that speaks, let's say, only Dutch, in 10 years, I'll be able to get along in that society pretty good. I think I'll be okay in 6 months where I can function all right, and I'll probably always have an accent and the nuances of the language I'd miss. But part of it is you have to commit yourselves to this, and this society has been an enabler that has been, in some ways, encouraging these ethnic enclaves and the linguistic enclaves that exist. So they do exist in school that hold kids back. They exist in homes. The linguistic isolation that takes place in the homes. So if I can remember a young student that was in a reading learners class, and I went in and sat there and listened to the lessons, and this young fellow was, you could tell he was smart, but he just didn't do very good at English. And so when he was done, and he was about 3rd or 4th grade, and I know the teacher, but I was just there to get a feel for what was going on in that one-on-one class teaching him English. And I said, how many lessons has he had? And she said, 45 lessons. And I said, he's been here how long? Well, he's been here a year and a half. Could hardly speak English. And I said, he's a smart kid. He should be a lot further along than this. Why not? And I don't know much about education, but I could sense that about this kid. So she said, well, you're right. He is a smart kid, and he should be further along. But he's here from his parents are in Florida and can't take care of him, so they sent him up here to be with he lives with his aunt. And his aunt is a Spanish teacher here in school. And so when he goes home, she practices her Spanish on him, so she doesn't know Spanish. Well, okay. Now it explains it, doesn't it? That's part of that family isolation that comes on. And just a number of other data that the Lexington Institute study shows that they found that an immigrant that speaks English well will earn 33% more in wages or an immigrant who speaks English poorly. And when a person who speaks English very well, that person will earn 67% more. So why wouldn't we encourage them to lift up their ability and on top of that, all of the things that we can do to encourage people to learn English here in the United States. It helps strengthen this common form of communications currency, and it ties us together as a people. If we don't understand what someone is saying to us, we have all kinds of suspicions about what it might be. They might laugh or snicker over on the side of the room and be chattering away in some language we don't understand. And then you think, what are they saying about me? It might be nothing. Or they might be saying, I really like that guy, Steve King. Well, it recognizes my name, not the rest of it. And so it lowers suspicion, and from a national and a global standpoint, people that can communicate directly with each other, there are stronger bonds and stronger relationships.